felt like crushed by that lift.
The wipeout I'm going to talk about today, it's one that I'll never forget because it was on the back of the most intense swell chase, storm chase I've ever done. In the middle of COVID, just found out that we're having a baby, missing the baby scan, arriving the night before, sleeping in a tent on the mountain above Jaws, not getting any sleep that night because the waves were thundering so loudly, and first thing that next morning, paddling out into some giant waves at windy, aggressive, violent Jaws. Whew. I had 2 great waves off the bat, and I really felt like my trip was already made, like with those 2 waves. I remember thinking to myself, I want to go sit way out the back and I want to wait for a wave that's going to change my life. That's always the goal on these trips, is to get those life changes. And there was the opportunity to get 40-foot plus barrel out there. Like, there were huge waves coming through, and it was Kyle Lenny was just on absolute fire that day. He got so many good waves, and there was incredible waves to be had. And I was sitting out the back there with a few of the local boys, and this big wall of water came in, and it like stretched, and that Jaws does it like nowhere else in the world, where the wall of water fills up the whole bay, and as far as you can see, like, it feels like it's going all the way across the bay to the mountain. It's filled with this thick, big wall of water that comes in, and as it comes into the bay, it starts to bend and it starts to wrap as it starts to feel the reef, and it feels like all that energy suddenly starts to converge right into the point of takeoff where you are. It is the most intense feeling, and I was kind of like, this particular wave, it looked like one of the biggest waves of the day, and I looked around and nobody was seeming interested in it. It had gotten really windy by that stage. And I was like, wow, okay, let's give this thing a crack. I'm going to give this a go. And I felt like if I make this thing, it's going to be the ride of a lifetime. And it was an amazing feeling, actually, like the feeling of committing to something that feels on the edge of my ability. Like, those are the moments that I really look for, is the moment that challenges all of my experience and my preparation and the wave that I've been visualizing for like my whole life. Those particular moments when I surrender control and I commit to that wave, it's one of the most incredible feelings. And in my mind and in my heart, I just felt like I'm going on this thing no matter what, and it was full commitment. And I, quite last minute, spun my nose towards the rocks and I started paddling and stroking in, and I remember like putting my head down, trying to put my chin on the deck of the board because it was really windy, so I wanted to keep the nose of the board down and get as much forward momentum as possible. And as I started paddling, the wave picked me up, and it was like, just felt like this massive ocean swell that was picking me up slowly. And I was trying to like claw my way down the wave face to get that forward momentum, and as I looked over the edge, it was like the bottom of the wave was dropping away really quickly, and I felt like the wave was getting vertical so fast, and I was like just trying to claw my way down it, but I suddenly felt like I was behind the bubble, like something just didn't feel right, but I was fully committed. But it just felt like it was getting steep too quickly, and the water was starting to really draw up the face, and the wind was blowing up the face so hard. All the factors were moving upwards, and I was trying to get down against all those kind of upward forces. And I popped to my feet, and I really tried to like put my hands in front of me and my weight as forward as possible to try get down the wave, but it just felt like I was at the very top of this extremely vertical big wall of water, and I suddenly felt like I was in a very bad position. I leaned forward, and I just remember feeling air under my board, and as like the air got under my board, it shifted a little bit sideways, and I stuck the drop, but my body kind of had twisted the wrong way, and as my foot landed on the board, it slipped. And I remember thinking, before I paddled out, I was waxing up my board that morning, and Jaws is like very muddy, and this dog with muddy paws ran over my wax, and this mud got like stuck into the wax. I tried to wax over it, but the mud just smeared into the wax, and I was just, in that moment, I was thinking, that dog, oh my gosh, that dog. Because as my foot landed, it slipped onto the rail, and it sent my board into a cutback the wrong way. Instead of going towards the shoulder to the right, I was in a cutback going to the left, and because of that cutback, it kind of made me straighten, and I was fully off balance, and the wave, like kind of out the corner of my eye, I could just see it stretching all the way to the channel, standing up vertical, already starting to break, and I just knew like I was in for one of the most intense scenarios of my life. And the lip of the wave landed on the tail of my board, and it hit me so hard. And I remember the last thought I had, I think, before I went into the wipeout was like, I was really deep and far up the point, and I just thought to myself, I'm so far away from help right now, and this is going to be one of the most intense situations of my life, and it's time to go into survival mode, calm everything down, surrender control, and survive this thing. And as the lip of the wave landed on the back of my board, it exploded me so hard. It felt like a truck had hit me. It was just the most felt like the weight of the force of the entire ocean, like tons and tons of water, just blasted me off my board, and instantly into like really violent, but also just sending me in this like stream going down really, really deep into the depths. And I felt my ears popping, and I think that was one of the deepest that I've ever been pushed, because I felt like my ears were at the edge of what they could handle and were still driving me deeper and deeper and deeper, and I didn't have time to equalize. I'd inflated my suit, but it just kept pushing me deeper and deeper, and I was like, for sure my ears are gonna burst, because I could just feel this like overwhelming pain, and like on the edge of the threshold of what my ears could handle, and just still driving me deeper and deeper. As that wave hit me, I was like, okay, let's do a slow count to 20 and see where we're at. And I think that was one of the things that was great. Like, I was like, let's count to 20. I said a little prayer, and I was like, I surrender right now. And yeah, the whole situation was so intense. I think I got to about 16, 17 seconds until the wave released me, and like fully inflated, I shot up through the foam. I came up, I got like a few breaths, and there was another really, really big wave, a huge like foamy coming straight for me. And once again, I like did my big out breath, which I find really, really helps. I breathe all my air out to empty the tank, and then my big breathe in, which is belly, chest, shoulders. Like that 3-stage breathe in. I got a really good breath, and the next wave smoked me again. It like very violent, but pulled me really deep, and my ears felt like they had been like damaged because they were aching by that stage. And again, it pushed me really deep, and like the pain was so intense as it pulled me really deep under the water. And again, I felt like I was on the threshold of my eardrums popping. Fortunately they didn't, and I was fully inflated and just, I was so deep under the water. But yeah, fortunately I had that really good breath and remained calm, and I came up after the second one, and one of the boys on the ski came and picked me up, and yeah, I got dropped off in the channel. I remember Tom Lowe was sitting on a boat, and he was looking at me with like these big eyes, and he was like, bro, you're so fortunate that you are okay, because I literally was under the impact of all that falling water. The lip of the wave landed like pretty much on my back leg and exploded me. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that I survived that wipeout unscathed. And it was, yeah, one of the most intense things I've ever been through. But at the same time, it felt like a very empowering experience that I was able to withstand like such a heavy beating at one of the scariest waves in the world, and come out unscathed. Thank you, Lord.